What is going on, my friends, and welcome back to another video on the channel. Well, Decentraland's modest price is up about 13% in the last 24 hours, and it's doing pretty dang on amazing. A lot of people are excited about this bounce that we're seeing, and so in today's video, I kind of just wanted to talk about what we're seeing and start to put a little bit of statistics and data behind this price movement so people can kind of have a clearer picture of what exactly is going on. So with that being said, of course, let's go ahead and let's get straight into the video. So in the last video, we were talking about if mono was getting set for an explosive move. Now, mind you, this was just 3 days ago, right before we saw this big push to the upside. Now, in that video, what we talked about was the fact that we saw a consolidationary trend coming out of the break of this trend line, okay? And what that meant is that we were seeing the breakout to the top side of course, this downward sloping level of resistance, but we were finding this consolidation, right? We were finding the symmetrical triangle. We weren't just seeing that boom, that big move to the upside. So what I told you all was that I think the best move in that place, whenever we were like right here roughly, I was like, wait and let's see what happens whenever we see the break of this symmetrical triangle right here. And now what I told you, I was like, we have two options. Option number one is we'll break to the upside. I said this one's a little bit less likely due to the fact that the symmetrical triangles typically are continuation patterns, meaning that if you go into a downtrend, you go into it, you'll likely continue into it, okay? But what I told you is that if we do break to the downside, be looking for this $2.96 level to hold, as that is, of course, our 0.786 Fibonacci level. As you can see, from our swing high to our swing low, this is our 786 at 296, and as we drew on that line, you can see that we broke to the bottom side. Boom, came down to 294, it was a little bit lower. We saw them touched right at our key level of support and then the bounce back to the top side, okay? And this is why we weren't buying while we were in here, because that was always on the table, okay? And so now I'm gonna be talking about, now that it does seem as if support has been established, now that it does seem that we may be holding outside of this downward sloping level of resistance and that this intersection was successfully held as support, what do we see now and when do we start looking to increase positions or be buying? Of course, if you watch my video from the other day, I was telling you guys about how just YOLO buying whenever you see red or a lot of red or a lot of green is typically never a good idea, and that I always look for confirmations. And so in today's video, let's talk a little bit about confirmations and what I'm looking for from the charts to say, okay, this is probably a good buying opportunity. So in my opinion, the most important thing that we can see happen at this point is that we can confirm, of course, that the bottom is in around 296. Now, the way in which we do that is that we start to finally set some higher structural highs. Now, what that means is that I'm going to be looking on the daily charts for where did we put in some highs at, okay? Where did we see clear short-term reversals? That was going to be here. That was going to be here. That was roughly right there. And of course, we did have the all-time high here. And now, whenever we're in a downtrend, one of the key obvious aspects of a downtrend is lower highs. We're going down, we bounce up, we set a lower high. Down, bounce up, lower high. Down, bounce up, lower high. And we continue. And that's what a downtrend is. Now, whenever you start to see these lower lows that we're setting, the bottom side, once you start to notice the distance between those getting shorter and shorter, and we can see kind of this rounding off effect, we need to start being aware that, okay, likelihood is this downward pressure is slowing down. The bulls may be starting to have more success pushing the price back up. And with that comes the starting of an uptrend at some point, which is going to be entailed by the setting of a new structural high. Okay, that's what we want to see. We want to see the price come back up off of the high we set at 366, this most recent reversal high. Boom, boom. And we want to work our way back up and just simply set the new higher high. Until we see that happen, I personally wouldn't be buying, because that's the only true confirmation that a downtrend could be ending. Now, there are times in which we will set higher highs and then set a lower low and just see a massive correction to the downside, but it becomes less and less likely. And so my whole game plan right now is we need to get above $3.66 before I even start considering buying, because at this point we're still setting lower highs, although we did see this beautiful move today. Because if we're being realistic, I mean, we saw a move of what? 29 to 30% back here, and that still just led to even a further continuation to the downside. So of course this does look good, but realistically we are still in a downtrend, and although we did break trend, we have not set the uptrend yet. Okay, we're kind of in the middle of a transitionary phase here. And now as that does happen, of course we are going to start to see some of our EMAs getting interacted with, and that's why I do love the $3.66 level as my target for entry right now, because if that was the case, we would also see the re-clearing of the 20 daily EMA EMA, which has significantly impacted the price in history. Of course, as we can see, we've come back down to this level a few times as we did continue our uptrends. And you can see before we saw this big, meteoric rise, it always served as an important level of support and resistance, as we would hold it here or we would get rejected from it here, and then we would use it here, of course, to see the massive move to the upside. So as we do look for that 366 level to be cleared and held above, we need to see a close on the daily charts above this level. That will also allow us to see this move above the 20-day EMA, which is going to just be significantly important for us to see that continuation to the top side. Now, if we do look at something like our 20 moving average, of course, we have not gone back up to recapture that 20 simple moving average just yet, but considering the fact that we did see a fully complete move from the top of our Bollinger Bands to the bottom side of our Bollinger Bands, it is within the realm of possibility, of course, at this point for us to make a move back to the top side, as we have a tendency to go bottom to top to bottom to top to bottom to top, etc. Now, we do need to be aware that our Bollinger Bands are still in a downward slope here, meaning that we are not out of the woods just yet. We are still in a downtrend. And so until we start to see that momentum change, we can't get our hopes up too high. But the biggest first step, the thing that we need to be looking for at this point to start to see a turnaround in all of these things, is the setting of that new local high. As we do that, we may rebound, come back down to 350 or something like that to set in a new low, and then we start to look for that completion, right? Maybe some type of inverse head and shoulder starts to form, or something of that nature that allows us to say, okay, we're working our way back up. But at the moment, we don't have that just yet. And now, one thing we also cannot forget about is that the majority of the market is being controlled by Bitcoin. And so on the channel, we've been tracking this descending wedge that Bitcoin has been in for the last about week or so. And so with that being said, don't forget that if we see Bitcoin's price breaking to the upside, that's likely going to be followed by Mana and all of our other cryptos seeing a similar growth. But if we do see Bitcoin start to break back down to the downside, that will very likely trigger a lot of panic. That's going to probably trigger some people to get a little bit worried and a little bit nervous, and that can definitely affect Mana's price as well. So while it is important to keep an eye on Mana and to keep an eye on the structural highs and structural lows in which it's setting, considering the fact that Bitcoin is in control of the market right now, you need to also be watching for this breakout here before doing too much buying or too much selling, because this is going to have a significant impact on what the price of Mana does as well. So personally speaking, what I'm going to be doing is waiting for confirmation of the clearing and closing above $3.66. And once we're able to do that, that's going to be a massive confirmation to me that we're starting to work our way up, especially since the fact that we're not seeing any divergences on our RSI yet. I do like that, because that means that we do still have this room to work. We're not seeing any bearish divergence pushing us back down at the moment or anything of that nature. So I do believe this is very possible very soon, but that's the only time I would be buying. So with that being said, of course, I will keep you guys as up to date as I possibly can as this thing does start to move. The Mana updates will probably come a little bit more frequently now that we have broken trend and we are looking to start to turn around here. So definitely do stay tuned. And if you don't ever want to miss one, all you have to do is when you subscribe to the Tyler Hill Investing channel, simply just turn on the notifications and you will not miss a single one. But with that being said, of course, I have 2 more videos coming out today, so do stay tuned for those, and I'll see you next time. Peace.